March 15th, 2026. If you are watching this right now, you already know something big is happening. And I am not talking about the kind of big that trends for a day and disappears. I am talking about the kind of big that historians write about decades later. The kind that reshapes borders, rewrites alliances, and buries secrets so deep that governments spend years pretending they never happened. So if you found this video today, stay with me, because what I am about to walk you through is not speculation. It is a pattern, and patterns do not lie. Iran is claiming it did something that no country has publicly admitted to doing in modern warfare. It claims it reached beneath the ground, beneath the streets of Tel Aviv, and struck the most protected command infrastructure in the entire Israeli military. Not a radar tower, not a fuel depot, the bunker. The one built with American money, designed by American engineers, shielded from electromagnetic pulses, and hardened to keep functioning even if every building above it is reduced to ash. The bunker where someone like Benjamin Netanyahu would be taken if the war above ground became unwinnable. That bunker is real. And Israel, for its part, sealed the streets, blocked every camera crew, and refused to say a single word about it. When a government goes that quiet, that fast, it is usually because something happened that they do not want you to calculate. Let me take you through the full picture, because this story has layers that most coverage is completely missing. It starts with what is sitting beneath a compound in central Tel Aviv called the Kiryah. Most people who have heard of Israeli military headquarters imagine something like a reinforced base with maybe a few underground shelters. The reality is something far more serious. Beneath the Kiryah, there is a layered network of underground command infrastructure that Israel has been quietly building and expanding for multiple decades. Two installations in particular are worth understanding in detail. The first is known as Site 81. It sits somewhere beneath the center of Tel Aviv, and according to documented reports, it spans roughly 6,000 square meters of electromagnetically shielded intelligence space. It was specifically engineered to survive electronic warfare attacks and to maintain secure communications even if everything operating above ground is destroyed or disrupted. The second installation carries a name that sounds almost mythological: the Fortress of Zion. This is a newer and significantly deeper military command post built directly beneath the Kiryah headquarters. The New York Times was granted access to it and described a nerve center where approximately 70 personnel sat across multiple levels, all facing wall-mounted screens that tracked live strikes in real time. During active conflict phases, the population inside that facility swelled to thousands of soldiers operating around the clock. This is the infrastructure that the IRGC has been referencing when it talks about underground command targets in Tel Aviv. And this is what Iranian missiles have been aimed at. Now, here is the context that makes the current claims land differently than they would in isolation. This is not the first time Iran targeted this area. During the 12-day war between Iran and Israel in June 2025, a conflict that resulted in 28 Israeli deaths and over 3,000 hospitalizations, Iranian ballistic missiles struck the North Tower of the Da Vinci apartment complex in Tel Aviv. The entire impact zone was immediately sealed. No journalists were allowed near it. No cameras documented the aftermath in real time. The Jerusalem Post later reported that the missile had landed, in their own phrasing, a stone's throw from Netanyahu's office, which at the time was located in what was referred to as Building 22. Weeks after that war concluded, the Prime Minister's office entered a period of renovations. Israeli officials never confirmed or denied that the building had sustained structural damage from the strike. But the timing spoke for itself. And here is the detail that has never been adequately explained. To this day, Google Maps blurs the satellite imagery over that specific section of Tel Aviv. On Leonardo da Vinci Street, directly in front of those towers, Google does not provide street view access. Russia's Yandex Maps applies identical treatment, censoring both visual imagery and location data for the Da Vinci complex. France 24 conducted a formal analysis and concluded that Israeli media coverage of the Da Vinci strike had been deliberately held back. Haaretz waited 2 full weeks before publishing anything substantive about the hit, even though photographs had already begun circulating online through independent channels. So Iran targeted this zone once before. The damage was hidden. The media was kept out. The satellite data remains blurred. And now, in March 2026, the IRGC is claiming it reached the same coordinates again, this time with more advanced weapons and a more deliberate targeting sequence. To understand why that claim carries weight, you need to understand the scale of what has been hitting Israel over the past 10 days. On the first day of the current offensive, approximately 90 ballistic missiles were fired at Israeli territory. Day 2 saw around 60. After that, the pace settled into roughly 20 per day, arriving in smaller and more frequent bursts. But the shift in pattern is not the most important detail. What matters more is what changed inside those missiles. The individual salvos have gotten smaller, but the weapons themselves have grown significantly more destructive. By March 5th, a military source communicating with Iran's Fars news agency confirmed that Iran had launched more than 500 ballistic and cruise missiles combined, with over 2,000 drones since the conflict began. Iran's own breakdown of that firepower claims that 40% was directed at Israeli targets and 60% at American positions distributed across the broader region. One weapon in particular demands specific attention because it changes the entire strategic calculation around underground bunker targeting. The missile is designated the Khorram Shar 4, also called the K-Bear. It was first publicly revealed in May 2023. It carries a range of roughly 2,000 kilometers. Its warhead weighs approximately 1,500 kilograms, and its cluster configuration activates at around 7 kilometers of altitude, releasing approximately 20 individual submunitions, each carrying roughly 2.5 kilograms of explosive charge across a massive dispersal zone. That dispersal pattern is what separates this weapon from a conventional ballistic threat. A standard warhead needs a precise, direct hit to damage a buried installation. A cluster warhead transforms the entire surface above that installation into an area saturation zone, shredding ventilation shafts, communications infrastructure, external antennas, and access points. If those submunitions are landing within the physical footprint of the Kiryah, the question is no longer whether they reach the neighborhood. The question becomes whether the effects reach the depth. The IRGC confirmed it deployed this weapon during what are called the 19th wave of Operation True Promise, naming central Tel Aviv, Ben Gurion Airport, and the 27th Air Base of the Israeli Air Force as coordinated targets, with warheads in the 1,000-kilogram class. Israel disputed the majority of these claims, insisting its air defense systems intercepted every overnight missile, though it did acknowledge one morning strike that landed in open ground near a central town. Firefighters responded to 2 confirmed impact zones in central Israel, where cluster munitions had visibly scattered across the ground. One first responder described finding a man in his 40s lying on a grass area with a severe shrapnel injury. The performance of Israel's air defense systems throughout this conflict deserves honest examination because the public narrative and the operational reality are not the same thing. Most outside observers assume Israel's layered defense network, which includes Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow 3, is functioning at something close to total effectiveness. The real picture is more complicated. The deadliest single strike of the war so far occurred on March 1st in Beit Shemesh. A missile carrying approximately 500 kilograms of explosive collapsed an underground civilian bomb shelter accessible by 2 flights of stairs. 9 people were killed inside it. Investigators concluded after the fact that even a fully reinforced shelter built to code would not have survived a direct impact from that warhead. An interceptor was fired at the incoming missile. It missed. There was no mechanical failure identified. The system engaged and simply did not connect. The White House has stated that Iranian ballistic missile strikes dropped by roughly 90% between day 1 and day 6, crediting joint American and Israeli operations targeting Iranian mobile launch platforms inside Iranian territory. But even with that reduction, missiles continue to break through. As of March 8th, 4 confirmed major impacts had struck the Israeli home front, hitting Tel Aviv, Beit Shemesh, Beersheba, and a central Israeli location. Since the war began, 1,619 Israelis have been hospitalized. 87 remain in hospital care. 4 are listed in critical condition. 10 Israeli civilians have been confirmed killed. Now, here is the mirror image that both governments are actively pretending does not exist. While Iran is claiming to target Israel's underground command architecture, Israel carried out the fully documented version of that exact operation against Iran. On March 6th, approximately 50 Israeli Air Force fighter jets dropped around 100 bombs on the underground bunker known as Ali Kham, located beneath the leadership compound in central Tehran. The IDF announced total destruction of the facility. The bunker extended beneath multiple city streets and contained meeting chambers, secure entry corridors, and command rooms regularly used by senior Iranian officials. Even after the assassination of Khamenei on the first day of the war, Israel's Unit 8200 and Unit 9900, its signals intelligence and visual intelligence branches respectively, had spent years mapping every corridor, every access point, and every structural detail of that facility before the strike order was issued. The footage was released publicly. The confirmation was explicit and detailed. Iran has produced no equivalent documentation for its claimed strike against Israeli underground infrastructure. But the absence of publicly released evidence is not the same as the absence of an event, especially when the impact area was sealed off immediately, when satellite imagery of the location remains blurred to this day, and when the same zone was struck during the 2025 war and the media was physically prevented from documenting what they found. The broader mathematics of this conflict are accelerating in ways that affect every country watching from the outside. Crude oil has crossed $115 per barrel, a direct result of disrupted shipping through the Strait of Hormuz and damaged energy infrastructure across Gulf state facilities. More than 1,300 Iranian civilians are confirmed dead, including 194 children, according to the human rights activist news agency. 7 American service members have been killed at positions across the Middle East. The United States has sunk more than 30 Iranian naval vessels and declared Iran's Navy combat ineffective as an operational force. The White House has communicated that it requires 4 to 6 additional weeks to accomplish its stated military objectives. Hezbollah has opened fire from Lebanese territory, launching barrages at Israeli positions and engaging in direct clashes with Israeli ground forces near the border town of Edessa. The Islamic resistance in Iraq has joined the offensive with its own coordinated drone and missile campaign. And on March 8, 2026, Iran installed Mojtaba Khamenei, the dead supreme leader's own son, as his formal successor. The IRGC and Iran's entire senior leadership structure immediately pledged allegiance to him. That succession is not a footnote. It is the single variable that determines whether Iran's missile campaign can maintain coherence under the sustained pressure of American and Israeli bombardment. Iran has handed wartime command authority to a man who has never held public office and has never carried a formal military title of any kind. He inherits a war that his father did not start, a ballistic missile stockpile that has already been significantly depleted, and a military that has absorbed more than 3,000 confirmed personnel casualties since the opening strikes, according to Israeli intelligence estimates. Whether Mojtaba Khamenei can sustain targeting discipline, maintain logistical rhythm, and hold the strategic thread under continued bombardment is the open question that every defense ministry in the world is tracking in real time right now. What we are left with is a picture that neither government is willing to describe honestly. The sealed streets around the Kiryat, the censored satellite maps, the media blackouts that have followed every significant strike near that compound, a second straight war in which Iranian missiles have landed within the footprint of the most classified command facility in Israel. And on the other side, a documented Israeli strike that reached beneath the streets of Tehran and demolished the bunker that Iran's leadership had relied on for decades. Both governments are conducting the same operation. Both are hunting the other side's buried command architecture. One side released the footage and made its case publicly. The other side sealed the blast radius and went silent. Neither has defined what the end of this war actually looks like. Neither can fully verify what the other is concealing beneath the rubble. And with a new and untested supreme leader now holding authority over Iran's nuclear and military apparatus, the question is no longer whether this conflict escalates further. The question is whether anyone remaining in either capital has a coherent plan for what comes after it does.